While we are all certainly focusing on the issue at hand, the pandemic that we're going through right now, it is also necessary and worthwhile to be thinking about what our world is going to be like once we get through this to whatever degree. Because certainly there is going to be significant change in various areas to various degrees in the economy, business, employment, and just life. So to look at the future, we have a futurist. And this is Karen Sands. And she just got recognized from Forbes Magazine as one of the top leading global female futurists in the world. Her focus since the 70s has been on the news story of our age, double entendre there, age meaning our age.
And epic.
And what?
And epic.
Yes.
And our epic.
And she is the leading edge geofuturist, which looks at the intersection and the future of work and longevity. She has worked with the United Nations on a gerontology report, and she's the author of about 11 books, the four most notable ones being The Greatness Challenge, Visionaries Have Wrinkles, The Ageless Way, and Gray is the New Green. So first of all, as a futurist, I don't see any Ouija boards or
no crystal ball.
No crystal ball in the background. So first of all, as a foundation for this interview, define what a futurist is.
Well, I think a futurist really, let me say this. What a futurist isn't is better off than what a future is. Too many people think that we do have crystal balls. And if anybody, whether they call themselves a futurist or they call themselves anything, if they tell you that they can predict the future, that I can predict the future, run out the door as quickly as you possibly can. That is not what futurists are about. We do focus on what we believe may be different scenarios of the future based on what we're seeing, what we're tracking, what are the trends, what are the split stories that are coming up, and then applying them to whatever sector or issue we're addressing, right? So it's a constant awareness and sensibility to the nuances of what may be evolving. But we cannot predict. I can't tell anybody what the future will be. I can give you some ideas of what I think might be happening, but that's about as far as we can go. And I've applied the future to all that I do with my consulting to companies, but also my individual work in groups and with individuals, coaching. I mean, because if you don't understand where you are, you're going to end up where you're headed, and that may not be where you want to be. So it's really critical to have all the information at our fingertips. It's really important for all of us, me included, to take a pause, to take a time out, to really say, wait a minute, what was 2 or 3 weeks ago is over. It will never, ever be that way again. And what we're in now, when it finally ends and moves out, it doesn't mean it won't come back, because I can't predict that either. But let's assume when it finally starts like a normative curve and starts to slide out, that new normal will be a normal we have never, ever seen or experienced before. When you can accept that where we are now is a humongous pause for all of us, and what we will open up to when this ends will be totally different. So what we did before pandemic and what we're doing during pandemic may not apply to what we see when the pandemic ends or slows down significantly. We're in VUCA times anyway, volatile, ambiguous, I left out one, complex. All of this is the time we're in, but it's also aspirational. We need to get in touch with what really matters during this time and realize that what we did before, we may not be doing when it's over. So, but you can't do that when you're caught in freak out, right? And so I'm going to be offering, starting next Monday, if Zoom allows me to get in the queue, and every Monday open mic. And I don't have it arranged, so hopefully if people want to find out about it, they can reach me at Karen@KarenSands.com.
You dropped out. Karen@KarenSands.com.
Yeah. And you can find out the dates and the times, because I'm just arranging it. Because we need to be there for each other, and I need to be there. And because a lot of my life's work rather, has been around reinvention. So, that being a futurist and reinventing all goes together. Being a boomer, especially now, but any generation, any age, this is going to be about total reinvention, because what we're going through is not a cyclical change. Cyclical, like the stock market goes up, the stock market goes down. We're going to what's called a structural change. Structural meaning it shifts and it isn't going back. It will last, like the computer. When the first computer chip, that changed everything. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what this pandemic is going to be about. So how we work, perhaps now employers will finally have the facts that productivity increases when we work remotely, whereas they were so prone not to allow remote working. In fact, it's really interesting, the more and more clients and colleagues that I speak to who are working remotely, they are working more hours and more intensely than they did before the pandemic.
Yep, same thing. I have a son in China, and where at the point of this interview, things are better. But he and his colleagues found that they were getting a lot more done by working remotely. So let's look at because thinking of people, including myself, that how this change, as you mentioned, that this isn't a cyclical thing where it'll come back to where it used to be. That's not going to happen. Of course, no. It's impossible to predict exactly what it'll look like and to what degrees in different sectors. But almost tick off, if you would, the different sectors, especially as it relates to people over 50 who are looking at another phase of life coming up, looking at finances, employment, so how the economy, jobs, workplaces, work demands, gig economy. I mean, these are in the first place very practical concerns that people are having. By the way, I just heard an interview just a short time ago, and I don't have those notes in front of me, but with an analyst and data person saying that yes, with boomers, you're looking at many having to dip into savings. And that when we get through this, also probably a lower rate of return. At the same time, and articles coming out about how critical it is to the economy for boomers to get back to work, both them and their employers, as well as the economy, because that's a quarter of the job force. So let's kind of talk dollars and cents, first of all, and those practical concerns and what we should at least be gearing ourselves toward being aware of.
Well, I don't think the jobs that were there before are going to be there afterwards. So that's going to shift dramatically because businesses are going to be closing so fast now, right? So entrepreneurial skills are going to be critical if you have them. Not everybody is suited to being an entrepreneur, of course. But those that are, this is the time where those interests and skill sets will be incredibly valuable. But tying back to my work in Gray is the New Green, and the future of work. The opportunities in the longevity economy, I don't know how many people will be left, of course, but in the longevity economy are enormous. In healthcare, in any way of serving people who are 50 plus. So you can just start by looking about what's important to you that needs to be offered, right? I mean, I've always said this because I started as a career counselor many, many decades ago. I've always said this, you have to look at what are your strengths and your gifts and your talents, and then look at where it intersects with what the world needs now. Oh, so example, what the world needs now, right, in the month of April 2020, right, is not a course on Gray is the New Green. But a course on reinvention and how to get yourself back centered and forward, that's what I'm offering, because I know that's what's needed now. If you give me a couple of months when people get to the point where they can actually think about, okay, now what am I going to do in the new world that's going to emerge? That's when gray is the new green, is the timing, right? I think there's some very deep work we all have to do now to survive what we're going to see in the next few weeks alone, just where we live, right? And then it's across the country. Then we can get into the more serious stuff. I just don't think this is the time for someone to run out and say, okay, I'm going to learn to be an XYZ. It's just chill. You don't even know what's going to be needed yet, right? But in the healthcare realm, and in the aging realm, there will always be opportunities, even if we lose many of the people in my age group and your age group. But there'll still be so many of us that need care, and we don't have enough people. Not only that, before this happened, there were 5,000 high-level jobs that weren't being filled, positions that weren't being filled, because we didn't have the knowledge workers and skilled workers, highly skilled, to fill them. So that isn't going away. It's only going to get bigger.
And by the way, it's worth noting that when we're talking healthcare, it's not just the medical arts, in other words, nurses and doctors and therapists and technicians and such, but it's the whole business of it. So virtually any skill that anybody has, you know, if you've been doing it for an automaker,
right,
the same position or skill set or expertise.
Making ventilators.
But I also wonder from a 50 plus state of mind too, the critical need in, I don't know, the way that I've looked at it, and some of the colleagues that I've talked to or friends, is this thought of, okay, the way things were are not going to be the same way again. Therefore, I need to start opening myself up by doing, first of all, a self-assessment. Okay, what are my strengths? What am I good at? What are my core skills? And then start thinking about it in a different context and being prepared for looking for a different job, a new job, you know, rejoining the job force, maybe being out of it for decades because we're going to need the money. And so I also look at the change in employment of what kinds of positions and how people are going to be hired as being almost, that to me seems just inevitable. I mean, what's your take on, I mean,
I felt that way.
You can be broad based on this too.
Yeah, and I felt this way before the pandemic. Because we don't have enough knowledge workers and we don't have enough high skilled workers, and they were out of the workforce. You know, you have to remember too, most of our CEOs are 50 and above, in fact 60 and above. So, you know, we're talking about needing that the experience and the know-how from the older people who have been trained and are experienced or can pivot, because right now is a pivot time. It's pause, then pivot. I think that's really important for people.
That's very good. Yeah, pause and then pivot.
Then pivot. Because if you pivot before you pause, you're pivoting and you're going to get screwed. You're going to be acting as if, and that if doesn't exist anymore. Right? And, you know, I know you might have thought it was fluff, but I'm very serious about this pause time. You really have to take the time to really know who you are, know who you really are, and what's out there, and you have to be willing to do the work. This is not going to be easy to create a new career, and truthfully, you can't do it on your own, nor being an entrepreneur. And I'm not just talking about working with me. I mean, there's a lot of coaches out there that can help you do this, but you must do this because this is such a slippery slope emotionally and psychologically for each of us, and as all of us as a collective, that if you jump too fast, it's a big, big mistake. And there's no rescue. There's nobody to rescue now, right?
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. In simple terms, at the beginning of this interview, we don't know what exactly it's going to look like. We just know that it's going to be different. What I hear you saying, and I advocate the same thing, and I've been hearing it from others, is a very good term, the pause. during that pause, it's assessing. It's like entering
But
into
it's
any
not a
crisis.
mental assessment, though. Hold on, Paul.
Okay.
Because, as a career coach, I can tell you, one of my specialties, I can tell you to jump in and do an assessment, and I can do assessments up the wazoo. But that's too mental. We're not in a mental phase yet. This just happened, and the worst is yet to come.
So then what do you recommend?
It's an emotional inventory. It's a psychological inventory. And it's really looking at, okay, what do I really want to do in the world? Really do in the world? And where am I needed now? Let it all go, what you knew, and open to what's possible. Because the good news is there's a lot of positive things coming out of this. I mean, the horror is going to be untold. I realize that, and I am not diminishing that by any means. But there's also silver threads in that lining. Just the time. I mean, I'm hearing about clients who are spending time now with their kids in a way they haven't been able to do. One mother took a 2-hour walk with her 10-year-old. Never would have gotten to do that before. Just way too busy, commuting, da-da-da-da. That richness that's coming now is even more so than, after the Great Recession or after 9/11. There's just such a richness that will carry through. I don't think anyone will be going back, at least not adults, will be going back to university. They will be remote. They'll be online to the max. But I don't think education will ever, ever be the same again. So educators have to think about what that means. What skill sets might they want to have so they continue teaching, right?
And by the way, that's the kind of, when I say an assessment, it's almost like, all right, yes, what do I want to do? And
What's
being
needed?
imaginative, what do I want to do? What's needed? Because where there's an opportunity, where there's a problem, there's a need. Where there's a need, there's an opportunity. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, as well as where the most likely job, all you have to do is just Google what jobs are on the way out. This will be pre-pandemic, which means it'll just accelerate it, and a few new ones will pop up, and a few old ones will. So you can certainly do that kind of an evaluation. Yes, I interpret this pause period as I've been doing it for less. It's like, all right, what is the new situation? What about me? What do I want? But then I also start thinking, okay, I have this skill set, and that, that self-evaluation, what am I really good at? And beyond the fact that I can do this program, or I've got experience editing video or something, how can I translate that core skill set into the current need? And and that's the whole point of why I called you to do this interview, is to bring awareness to the fact that now, we say, oh, that's one of those things that I just don't have time for. Well, even if you're still working, you ain't going out to dinner or over to a friend's house or whatever. Now now's the time to take the time to be doing this overall evaluation. And I always find that once you get going, and you really start thinking about it, you do a little bit of Google searching and things of that sort, it takes on a life of its own. You're thinking about it in the shower or while weeding the lawn.
The other thing, and this is funny, Thomas Friedman and I had a whole discussion on this a couple of years back.
The New York Times.
No. Encore.
Encore. Excuse me. The original. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate both of them actually.
Yeah.
But from Encore, because the way in which he was writing about reinvention was very different than what I write about reinvention or teach about it. So my view is reinvention is not just moving around the furniture in the living room. It's about tossing it all out and maybe even getting rid of the house. That's what reinvention is. And to do it so it works, so it's lasting, so it's meaningful, is a very deep dive. It is not just moving the furniture around or changing companies. You can do that if that's what you want. That is not reinvention. And the times we are in now and will be require the getting rid of the old furniture and even maybe the house.
And I would,
that takes help. You cannot do that alone. You can't do that just by going on Google and searching, because then your head's jumping in and it's messing it up. And the fear will come up, and the worry will come up. You need support. This is with someone, even if it's an accountability partner. I mean, I'm doing that with my husband. His
or masterminding with
yeah.
a colleague,
Right.
a informal friend. Yeah.
Exactly. And I will be offering things over time for that. But I'm just talking right now when you're in a pinch, right? Use Zoom, right? Because it is so, even for me, and I'm so well trained, I've been doing this for decades and decades, I still will slip off of my center point, my still point, and lose it. I've got to pull it back. I need that support as much as I'm giving out that support, right? But it's so important not to lose your center and to get out of the fear and say, wait a minute, this is temporary. It's so critical. Then look at, okay. So for instance, I was working with one guy the other day, and several of his businesses are on stop, right? And he was freaking out. I mean, he was melting. And for every good reason, family to take, et cetera, all the stuff that we all face. But when he was able to see that there is a future, assuming he physically moves through this, obviously, but there is a future, he could calm down. And then we could start looking at, wait a minute, give yourself some time here. Let's look at all the skills you've had, all the knowledge you've gained, and take it out of the realm you've been in. Just move it out. And now let's see where those same skills can be applied, where I said, to intersect with what the world needs now. There's such an openness of mind that has to come to this. There are no constraints now. And we're almost all in the same boat. Almost all of us are. And so it's all new. So there's nothing stopping your imagination. Nothing. It's just how you did it before and what you did before won't be the same. But what you bring to it is even better than it was before. And there is so much room for innovation. I mean, think of what's happened in the last few years. We have Zoom. Zoom didn't exist. Look how we're all being able to connect. I mean, whether it's FaceTime or Zoom, I'm connecting to grandchildren around the country that I wouldn't have been able to do 10 years ago.
Lean into the change, meaning, and embrace it. In the first place, you don't have any choice. It's kind of like, there's another phrase, adapt or die.
Right.
And this is just as we're talking about computer technology, or even World War II, or major events such as that, you come out the other side and it's a very different world. And you either adapt, and adapting and change is scary, and most people are resistive. Our brains are literally, through evolution, wired to resist change. So you have to overcome that. I feel like I'm blessed because with change, certainly not under these circumstances, but with change, I get excited about it because it's different. And I feel like, and I think this is a fundamental truism, is that with change, there is opportunity for things for you in whatever way, shape, or form to be better.
Exactly.
It's an opportunity.
And I feel that way anyway about the whole aging sector and the longevity economy. That it's an enormous bucket of opportunity, but now you add on to that, there's even more. We just don't know what they are yet because it's still emerging. So yes, I think we're going to hit bottom hard. Yes. But because we've had these other experiences, especially boomers who were hit the hardest in the Great Recession, right? Mm-hmm. We learned a lot. We have those bounce back skills because we can apply them now so that we don't dissipate, but we in fact evolve. And it's up to each of us to do this. No, it's not just one person. Each of us has to realize that. So that, and then I look at chaos theory, and you look at the flapping butterfly wings from around the world, right? Similar to how the
A butterfly flaps its wings in China, and there's a thunderstorm in Oklahoma, which is also kind of ironic with the
right, with the pandemic. Right, exactly.
But that's the standard analogy, yes.
Right. But so you put those two together, those two models of how we can look at the world and the future, right? If we can go with that evolutionary model and then spread it as chaos theory can, we actually can envelop the globe, because we're all going through the pandemic together, for good or bad. This is what it is. So out of it, we have a choice. We can either choose to sit on the wayside, on the sidelines, and watch it dissipate, or we can get really involved and take it to the next level. So I'm actually very optimistic about this, and I've written about this for years, and I would never have been able to tell you it would be a pandemic. How would I have known, right?
But we know that there was something out there, and by the way, we have to get used to the fact that once this is passed, something else is out there.
There'll
Whether
be
it's
another
pandemic, or there's
there'll be
something
climate
else.
change or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So bottom line, to some, your view is, and I think common sense dictates too, but especially coming from a futurist, that inevitably there's going to be very significant societal change, business, economics, the workplace, employment, the types of employment. I mean, the gig economy will probably explode, where most people are contract workers and freelancers and can work remotely and things of that sort. But that right now, it's to take a pause, take a breath, get past the fear, not try to make a plan yet, but pause, and then you can start looking at where are there problems, as you put it, intersecting.
Mm-hmm.
Intersecting
needs now, yes.
Intersecting with the need, reflecting on what your skills, talents, attributes, experience, wisdom are, and the big just accept the fact it's going to be change with it, and you can thrive. Resist it to your demise.
Yes. And with both of those, whether you resist or you go with the flow, right? You go with the process and trust it, you still have to take the time out. We don't know where we're going to land, but we better have a parachute, we better have masks, etc. We need to have the tools so that we know how to deal with the new normal.
And now is the time to take the time that you haven't had time for in the past. So, Karen, thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.